I'm Tim Turner. I teach here in the College of Arts and Sciences. My area of specialization is English Lit. I focus in particular on early English Lit with a specialization in Shakespeare. So I finished my PhD in English at the University of Texas at Austin in 2010. After that, I had a postdoc at Southwestern University, which is located just a little bit outside of Austin. There I sort of specialized in helping faculty members think about how they incorporated writing into their classes, so particularly people who weren't specialists in teaching composition, biologists and philosophers and art historians, which was a really great experience because it sort of gave me a behind-the-scenes look at how faculty work, administration, assessment, things like that, things that faculty members do have to worry about on a regular basis. And then I came here after that experience. I applied for the job in, 2012, I guess, and my first semester was August of 2013, so I've been here for about a year and a half. My research in the past focused, believe it or not, on representations of torture on the early modern stage, which sounds, I know, like a really unpleasant subject, and there were definitely times when it was a little bit depressing. But I came to my dissertation project at a time when torture was very much being debated in American politics and American law. So that was sort of what sparked my interest. And one thing I learned in the course of my research is that torture as a practice was markedly increased in the age of Shakespeare. So the animating question for my dissertation was how that was sort of reflected in the drama of the period. But it also speaks to a kind of philosophy I have about my approach to literature and literary studies. I'm very interested in thinking about connections between literature and what we would call sort of generally the real world. So how does literature engage with contemporary problems or contemporary questions? And the age of Shakespeare to me is really interesting, and why I sort of wanted to think about contemporary debates about torture through that period is because it's sort of the age when American history begins. The first American colonies by people from England are established in Shakespeare's lifetime. So it's just a particularly unique moment in history that was especially interesting to me. Well, last year, my research project was sort of advanced because I received a new researcher grant from the USFSM Research Council, which was tremendously beneficial. It provided money for me to travel to the UK and do some archival research at the Cambridge University Library and the British Library in London. And that project is focused on some Englishmen who came to the New World, particularly to Mexico in the 16th century, and sort of got abandoned and shipwrecked. And so they had to make their way back home. And eventually some of them went on to publish accounts of their experiences. The documents I got to look at are these unpublished records of what happened to them and their time in Mexico. Many of them were examined, for example, by the Spanish Inquisition. So it's a really kind of a confluence of all my interests: early modern travel literature, looking at the application of violence in these early modern contexts. So it's a very exciting project in that in the spring, actually, I'm going to be able to work with some students developing the materials that I gathered while I was overseas. So I'm also particularly excited about that. It's another thing I love about the job, that we have an opportunity to allow students to help us advance our research agendas. My time in the UK, it was incredible. It was the first time I had ever been to Cambridge and been able to do work in the Cambridge University Library, which is a beautiful but very imposing building. So you have to kind of go through this application process to even be able to, they just want to make sure you're not going to tear anything or spill anything on anything. So it was a really interesting process in itself. And basically, I just spent a week sort of cloistered away, calling up these volumes and going through them. What I found when I was there is that there was so much more than I anticipated, that I was just using my phone to take pictures of the pages so that later I could actually write down what they said. So that was a really exciting experience. And it was sort of increasingly exciting because I realized that a lot of this material just has never been seen before. It's in this archive, it hasn't been published, so it's sort of an exciting prospect to think that eventually down the road I might be able to share it with more people. And it was a very similar experience at the British Library in London. The British Library is in the heart of London. It's this huge metropolis, so just getting there every day was an adventure, an incredible, it's an incredible city. And to be there in this huge room surrounded by all these people who are working on just numerous projects with these incredible materials, really old materials, really interesting contemporary materials as well. There are birthday cards with John Lennon's handwritten Beatles lyrics written on the back of them. So it's just a really incredible place. Great. So one of the projects I am particularly proud to have been able to participate in was the Undergraduate Research Symposium, which just took place in October. We are so proud of that event because it's such a wonderful experience for our students. first of all, just as a professionalization experience to go and have to sort of think about how you're going to deliver your research findings to an audience that's interested and informed and wants to hear what you have to say. Just wonderful preparation for a career in any number of different fields. But we also really enjoy it because it's sort of a chance to show off the hard work that our students are doing. They put in a lot of time, in many cases, independently on these research projects, sort of outside of class time. And we're just so proud of them to be able to show that off. And then also to sort of show off, as I said before, that idea that one of the great things about working here is that we do get to spend time sort of researching side by side with our students. And we're very proud to be able to show that off as well. Currently, I'm teaching a course on early British literature. So we have these sort of so-called surveys of British literature. They're just sort of chronological. So the one I'm teaching now starts with Chaucer and ends with Shakespeare. So it's sort of the earliest phase of British literature. The other course I'm teaching is a course on Renaissance drama, which basically means any play written in the Renaissance not by Shakespeare. I know it sort of sounds like a very specialized field, but they're very interesting courses for a lot of reasons, and they sort of speak to the reasons why I encourage people to think about majoring in English, even though it isn't always obvious what careers they might be able to pursue. But the fact of the matter is that taking these literature courses, my students learned how to read things very closely. To know how to dissect complicated pieces of information is a really valuable skill in many different fields. Also, and maybe even more importantly, is that my students spend a lot of time thinking about writing and becoming better writers. So anybody who has an interest in writing and becoming a better writer is particularly well served by an English major, because we spend a lot of time working on that in the classes that I teach.